Hello, I'm Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute Fellow at the University of California, Irvine, here bringing you the summary of the last 24 hours of the Israel-Hamas war. It is currently the evening of December 27, 2023 in the United States, the morning of December 28, 2023 in the Middle East. Starting with the hostage situation, news regarding the Egyptian deal that Egypt put forth several days ago that has three phases, starting with the mutual hostage exchange, leading towards a ceasefire and eventually an entire reorganization of the Palestinian government and end to the war. After it was reported yesterday that both Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad have rejected the Egyptian proposal, the Wall Street Journal today quoted Egyptian sources saying that Israel, Hamas, and others all responded with demands for changes, however that no side actually rejected the deal. This contradicts the reports that were put out officially by Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. According to the Wall Street Journal, the Egyptian source also stated that the main sticking point is Hamas's involvement in the future Palestinian government, and that all sides, presumably Israel, Hamas, and also the Palestinian Authority, all have issues with how to correct this final point. Other news, the Saudi Elaf network also quoted an Egyptian diplomat that stated that Egypt has thrown its full weight into achieving this new deal and that Hamas is relating to it very seriously and positively. The source also added that Hamas must agree to this new deal, use the truce in order to reorganize its internal matters, and apply serious pressure on Israel to end the war. In other news, the Egyptian proposal was also presented to the Israeli cabinet today and discussed by the government. The Wall Street Journal reported that Israel is willing to discuss the first phase of the plan, i.e. the truce and exchange of hostages, however that more long-term phases are likely to be rejected by Israel. Other news was also reported that Israel is still awaiting the response from Qatari mediators regarding the proposal that Israel put forth to Hamas in order to have a 2 to 3 week truce and begin another phase of hostage exchange. Israel is still awaiting the response of Hamas that is due any day. Moving on to the ongoing fighting within the Gaza Strip. There were rockets and mortars sent from the Gaza Strip towards southern parts of Israel, however substantially less than in previous days. Mortars targeted primarily the areas surrounding the Gaza Strip, i.e. Nahal Oz, and there were also different rockets sent towards areas of Kisufim. Regarding the fighting in the Gaza Strip, in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip and Jabalia refugee camp, substantial IDF bombardments were reported throughout the refugee camp as the IDF continues to solidify its hold on the camp. In Gaza City, it was reported today that the IDF detonated a major tunnel network under the Rantisi hospital. According to the reports, the network ran several kilometers long and at times was 20 meters deep underground, running beneath schools and mosques as well. It also was reportedly to have had elevators and an entire electrical grid, and that it housed one of Hamas's main headquarters from which the Northern Division was running the entire war. Other news relating to Gaza City, there were major bombings reported against a 3-story building near the Al-Azhar University in the area. 60 Palestinians are reported missing after this bombing. Presumably they are dead, however, that is unconfirmed at this point. In the Darj Tufah area, there were also substantial battles reported between the IDF and Hamas, with IDF helicopters making repeated rounds and attacks against Hamas operatives, supporting the ground forces of the IDF. There's also confrontations reported on different fields surrounding the town, with 5 attack tunnels and an array of launching sites reportedly uncovered as the IDF continues to solidify its grip on the town. In the central parts of the Gaza Strip, there were substantial IDF bombardments reported throughout the day. These were reported throughout the entire main areas of the central parts of the Gaza Strip, the refugee camps of El Bureij, Nuseirat el-Maghazi, as well as the town of Deir el-Balach. Moving down south towards Han Yunis, the IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari today stated that the IDF has added another division to the fighting units in Han Yunis and that the fighting in Han Yunis is going to be expanded. Different confrontations were reported throughout the city in the last 24 hours. The IDF continued to uncover attack tunnels and attack different Hamas sites based on intelligence. Major gun battles are reported throughout many different parts of the city. There's also reports of a bombing that was carried out in buildings across the road from the main hospital in Han Yunis, and several Palestinians are reported injured and killed. Other news relating to Han Yunis, in the Khirbat Khuza'a area, which is the most eastern periphery of Han Yunis, an area which is really several kilometers away from the border with Israel, the IDF reported that it has launched a major ground operation. This is one of the towns that are really right on the border from which the October 7th attack was carried out. The October 7th attack, the attackers that came from Khirbat Khuza'a attacked the kibbutz known as Nir Oz. The IDF has named the operation Oz and Nir, and it is reportedly going to uproot a lot of the Hamas infrastructure in this area. Other news relating to the Gaza Strip, amidst disagreements within the Israeli political system, whether Israel should move on to the third phase of the war, i.e. the low-intensity phase that the United States wants Israel to move on to, or continue in the second phase, which is the current high-intensity bombing phase, at least until the end of January, the expanded cabinet in Israel today officially authorized the war cabinet to make the decision when it is going to move from phase 2 to phase 3. This does not mean that anything is going to actually be done in the coming days, since the war cabinet is split between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Gallant on the one hand, who say that Phase 2 should be continued, and Minister Gantz and Mr. Eisenkot, who say that Phase 3 should already be enacted in the coming days. However, at least the war cabinet has been authorized officially to make that decision. The IDF reported 200 bombings, including from the air and sea, that were carried out in the last 24 hours. Regarding casualties, 14 IDF soldiers were reported injured in the Gaza Strip. This brings the number of IDF soldiers who were injured in the Gaza Strip since the ground invasion began to over 900. The Palestinian Health Ministry is reporting that 195 Palestinians were killed in the last 24 hours, bringing the number of Palestinians that were killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began to 21,190, and over 55,000 are reported injured since the war began. Moving on to the humanitarian situation, telecommunications and internet in the Gaza Strip is gradually being restored. They all fell yesterday, however, unlike in the past. It was not suggested that this was an IDF operation, however, that this was likely due to bombings that knocked out communication towers. It is reported that telecommunications is gradually being restored in the last 24 hours. In other news, the Egyptian Al-Qahara Al-Akhbariya news network reported that Egypt is establishing a refugee camp in Khan Younis with IDF approval, and that Phase 1, involving the establishment of 300 tents that can house upwards of 1,500 people, has already been completed, and that this is going to be gradually expanded in the coming days, presumably in coordination with the IDF. Regarding the entrance of aid trucks, the IDF Civil Administration reported that 115 aid trucks carrying food, water, and medical supplies were inspected at the Nitzana crossing, then made their way to Rafah and entered the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours, adding that the Kerem Shalom crossing was closed today due to a UN request because of logistical issues on the Gazan side. In turn, Egyptian sources stated that 92 trucks entered through Rafah, adding that 4 of these were cooking gas trucks. The Palestinian Red Crescent nor the UN made any comment about how many trucks entered, so it was somewhere between 92 and 115 in the last 24 hours. Moving on to the West Bank, massive IDF activities were reported in Jenin, as well as in Halhul near Hebron and in Ramallah. In Jenin, the Palestinian news agency Shahab reported that the IDF activity is involving drones, and in Ramallah it's been reported that the IDF is moving house to house, presumably either searching for weapons or searching for specific people it is looking to arrest. 2 Palestinians are reported to have been killed in Ramallah, and the Wafa news agency is reporting that 7 Palestinians were killed in different confrontations in the Halhul area. Other news, after I stated yesterday that in Nur Shams near Tulkarem there was an initial report that 6 Palestinians had been killed in a drone attack, but however at that time this was unconfirmed. It has now been confirmed that in that operation 6 Palestinians were in fact killed. In addition, it was added that at the end of the operation the IDF left leaflets throughout the towns of Tulkarem stating, and I quote, "The fate of your city is in your hands. Do not let this area go the way of Jenin refugee camp," referring to the areas around Jenin that have become hotbed for different terrorist activities, resulting in substantial IDF activity, specifically since the war began, but also throughout the entire time of 2023. Other news relating to the West Bank, Israeli police arrested a Jewish man today, reportedly with disabilities, on suspicion of desecrating a Muslim cemetery in East Jerusalem with a severed head of a donkey. In other news, the IDF ousted 5 Israeli soldiers who are also settlers after an investigation into severe assaults that they carried out against Palestinians in the Wadi Asik region of the West Bank in October. According to the reports, they arrested 3 Palestinians, heavily abused them. They were part of a unit that has since been disbanded, and the 5 were now ousted from the IDF. In addition, the IDF published a summary of its activity in the West Bank since the war began. According to the report, 35 defined operations have been undertaken throughout the entire West Bank, resulting in 2,500 Palestinians arrested, of which 1,300 are members of Hamas, 25 different airstrikes, and 290 Palestinians have been killed. According to the report, the IDF states that, I'm quoting, "most of them were terrorists." Moving on to the northern parts of Israel, southern parts of Lebanon and Syria, there were rocket and missile barrages from Lebanon into Israel. A barrage of 16 missiles targeted the Kiryat Shmona area. 6 of these hit specific houses and badly damaged infrastructure. Other barrages included 18 rockets that were sent towards the areas of Margaliot, Tel Hai, and Rosh Nikra, and 3 Hezbollah drones that also crashed into the Hardov area. Hezbollah also stated that it launched over 30 Katyusha missiles. These are specific missiles that are a little bit weaker than the Burkan missiles that Hezbollah occasionally says that it fires. However, they are stronger than the rockets. They launched 30 Katyusha missiles in the last 24 hours. According to the IDF, it carried out a series of retaliations throughout different areas. These targeted different Hezbollah infrastructures as well as launching sites. The IDF also announced that in addition to southern Lebanon, it carried out retaliations in other areas of Lebanon. I remind you that yesterday it was reported that IDF warplanes were seen circling around the Beirut area. El Miadin reported substantial IDF bombings were carried out in Anakura. Another report is that the IDF attacked a home in Bin Jbeil area, it's in southern Lebanon, and 3 people were killed. This may be related to an announcement of Hezbollah that one of its operatives was killed in Bin Jbeil in the last 24 hours. However, it is unclear if this was a targeted assassination or what this was exactly. However, with that operative being killed, the number of Hezbollah operatives that the organization claims were killed since the war began stands on 129. Other news, in the southern parts of the Golan Heights, a suicide drone attack was carried out in the Hisfin area of Israel. The detonation caused damage to infrastructure, and according to different assessments, it was launched from Syria. Iranian militias in the area later claimed responsibility for firing against essential targets of Israel in the Golan Heights. Unclear what those targets were or what they were meant to be. According to different reports, the attack drone crashed in an area that was uninhabited but caused different damage to infrastructure. In other news, the IDF reported that it approved new operational plans for its northern forces should a war erupt between Israel and Hezbollah. Other news relating to the relationship between Hamas and Hezbollah, the French Le Figaro newspaper today put out an extensive report on the October 7th attack. In its report, it claimed that Hezbollah had no prior knowledge of the planned attack, and that Hamas's representative in Lebanon, Osama Hamdan, is quoted in the paper saying that he learned about the attack from the media itself. Other sources state that Hamas's deputy leader, Salah al-Aruri, who also is housed in Lebanon, was told about the attack only half an hour before it began in order to update Hezbollah and in order to encourage it to enter the war as well. The report also confirms what was stated several times throughout the first weeks of the war, that Yahya Sinwar, leader of Hamas in Gaza Strip, and Muhammad Def, the leader of the Al-Qassam brigades, were furious with Hezbollah for not throwing its weight into the war, and that this has caused a lot of tension and strife between the organizations. Moving on to some of the political and general trends for the last 24 hours, it was reported today that the Secretary of State in the United States, Antony Blinken, is due to arrive in Israel next week. This comes amidst the reported deadlines, quote-unquote, that the United States has given Israel to move from the second phase of the war to the third low-intensity phase of the war. According to initial reports, the United States was demanding of Israel that they do that as of the beginning of January, and it was stated the United States says maybe the middle of January. Now the Secretary of State is coming, presumably in order to discuss this. During his time in the Middle East, he's also going to visit Qatar, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. Other political news, there's continued political turmoil in Israel that may end up threatening the cohesion of the government. The Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, today announced that he will not be extending the term of the head of the prison service in Israel, and this violates the unity government agreement, i.e. the agreement of when the unity list, led by Benny Gantz, joined the government. According to the deal, there was supposed to be no change of personnel in high-ranking positions during the time of the unity government. Itamar Ben-Gvir has said that the deal was not signed with him and he's not part of it. This may end up being critically important since now there's threats that Minister Gantz is making that his party may leave the government. If that happens, the war cabinet effectively ceases to exist. The only reason the war cabinet was established in Israel was in order to separate it from the main cabinet and allow a much smaller division of people led by Prime Minister Netanyahu and Minister of Defense Gallant, along with Minister Gantz and Gadi Eisenkot, in order to run the war. So if these threats do actually come to the fold and the Minister Gantz's party leaves the government, this will be a major upheaval in the way the war is run. Other political news, Osama Abu Ali, who's a Palestinian ambassador to Jordan and a member of Fatah's National Security Council, spoke out against Hamas's attack on October 7th. Specifically, in an Al-Mashhad interview, he stated that Hamas, I'm quoting, brought 100 different Nakbas on Gaza, and that Fatah had tried repeatedly to reconcile with Hamas, quoting, because we were afraid of this October 7th day. Other news, there was a conversation reported today between Prime Minister Netanyahu and French President Macron. Macron expressed France's concern from the high death toll in Gaza and emphasized the need to expedite humanitarian transfers into Gaza and to work towards a long-term ceasefire. Other political news, the King of Jordan, Abdullah II, arrived in Egypt and met with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi today. The two published a joint statement in which they rejected any Israeli plans to uproot Palestinians from either the Gaza Strip or the West Bank. Moving on to speculations regarding the future of the Gaza Strip, in the Le Figaro article that I mentioned before, Khaled Mashal, who's a former leader of Hamas and today one of its current senior leaders, is quoted as saying that Hamas's strategy right now is to end the war, after which time Israel will withdraw and allow humanitarian aid into Gaza, adding, and I'm quoting, "Right now we are prepared to negotiate everything with Israel indirectly," but he also did add several things regarding possibly recognizing Israel in the future. He stated, and I'm again quoting, "In 2017, Hamas joined other political factions with regards to the question of establishing a Palestinian state in the 1967 borders without raising the issue of recognizing Israel. When the time comes, at the right time to establish a Palestinian state, we will discuss the options and the need to recognize Israel." This relates to a new Hamas policy document for 2017 in which the group agreed that it may accept the Palestinian state along the 1967 borders. However, the group, as Khalid Mashal says, did not mention if it would recognize Israel or not. Other news relating to the future of the Gaza Strip, Minister Gideon Sa'ar today of Benny Gantz's party stated in an interview that he's against the establishment of a Palestinian state, and he sees it as, and I'm quoting, a suicide belt around Israel. Any territory given to Palestinians will become a staging ground, and thus it is my opinion that we cannot have any retreats. The two-state solution is a real danger in my opinion. And in other news, MK Tzvi Fogel, who is of the Jewish Power Party, that is a party of Minister of National Defense Itamar Ben-Gvir, stated today, quoting, Israel must take over the areas above Wadi Aza, i.e. what is called today the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, continuing to quote, and establish the new Jewish settlements there. Decisive victory has two elements. One is that after the war, Hamas will not exist in the field, and two, that they will pay the price. We take over the area and bring Jewish settlements in, and he added, if anyone wants Al-Shifa Hospital to remain a relic museum, that is possible, but this will be among the Jewish settlements in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. That is my report for the last 24 hours. I'll be back tomorrow.